Hello and welcome back to the only show that ponders whether domestic violence can be considered part of a redemption arc. I'm Max,
I'm Matt.
And I'm Luke.
and this is Force for Thought. Alright, hello and welcome back. Andor Season 2, Episodes 7 through 9 just dropped. The Gormans have been massacred. Mon has stepped out into the limelight for the rebellion. Bix has stepped out on Cassian for the same reason. Cyril has died knowing he was wrong and that nothing he did mattered. And K2SO has entered the chat. We have so much to talk about, but at the same time, I feel like there is nothing that could be said. The show is perfect. I love it. It was an 11 out of 10. I think the episode Who Are You has officially dethroned One Way Out as the best episode of Andor and therefore the best episode of television ever. It was incredible, and I want to walk through the episodes one at a time, but first I do want to get your guys' overall thoughts. Matthew, what do you think?
I said I texted you guys this earlier. You guys watched it before I did. I don't know how you had the restraint, but I think after this arc, I'm confident in saying that Andor. We said this a while ago too, but I think I'm confident Andor is the best thing Star Wars has ever done. Is it my favorite? I mean, not necessarily yet. I mean, it's very, very high up there. You're battling with a lot of nostalgia there. My jaw was on the floor. I felt so amped. I've been putting off buying the vinyl for season 1 for a long time, mostly because it's like selects. It's like 18 tracks out of all that stuff out of the first season. But I instantly went and bought it, like like right after I watched the final episode because I mean it's episode 9, but it is like you said, 11 out of 10. It is a perfect show. Again, we're gonna obviously go into a lot of it, but I mean I could not believe multiple scenes within here and how good the editing is, the acting is, the drama is. It is amazing, and I've never seen a more obvious use of stormtroopers and yet stormtroopers in this arc felt so dangerous for the first time ever and so ominous that I was like, I've never seen the Force be explained like this. I've never seen stormtroopers be used like this. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We'll talk more about it, but the acting in particular is something that I'm very excited to talk about. I feel like this is the first time where I can actually differentiate some of the acting from the writing because both of it is so good that they bleed into the other and you like don't know where one starts and one stops. But this one I have a lot of praise for the acting. We'll talk more about it in a second. Luke, what did you think?
I loved it. It was unbelievably well written. A lot of my same issues from last week still persist with the 1-year time jumps and the pacing. I don't love. That is to take the show from a 10 to a 9.8. I think it is still by far the second best thing Star Wars has ever done behind Andor Season 1, and I felt comfortable. Like, almost all of my problems are the exact same as last week, and so if you want to hear about that, go back to last week, but I'm going to try not to harp on them as much this week because I did air all of that before, and so I'm ready to just talk about the good, and there's a ton of good to get into.
Yeah.
Also, just to asterisk this to Thunderbolts it or New Avengers, depending on when you watch
spoilers.
it.
And it's quite the spoiler. I have seen it, but shit, man.
That's not. They're changing all the branding. It's insane, actually, to do that.
They did
after
way
the
too
movie.
soon. Hold on, Marvel.
They did. But I was gonna say when I say Andor's the best thing that Star Wars has ever done, I'm looping season 1 and 2 in together, not season 2 specifically.
I would agree.
Well,
then. And I'm tired of people saying it's the best thing since the original trilogy. Strap on a pair of nuts and admit that this is better than the original trilogy. I know it was so groundbreaking and it's a classic. It literally does not get better than this. If this is not better than the original trilogy, then you've lost all sense of objectivity in my mind.
I think that's what I was saying though too. Is like, do I like the original trilogy better? Yes. Is it better? No. Like on a technical standpoint. You're battling with nostalgia. You're battling with one of the first movies you've ever seen. All that stuff. So,
and that's an uphill battle that you'll never win.
Yes,
but
exactly.
In terms of just quality, this stands above.
Yes, correct. Yes.
One thing I'm always interested on are IMDb ratings, even though they are arbitrary. But the episodes, as of this recording, they have been out for 24 hours now, and both Who Are You and Welcome to the Rebellion have 9.8s on IMDb, which is
should not go lower.
I mean, especially for Star Wars, that is crazy high in general, let alone Star Wars.
Yeah.
I mean,
those are Breaking Bad levels right there, and Mad Men. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think reasonably so. I think these are shows that should be in the same conversation as each other, and it pumps
I
me up to
agree.
no end that this is a Star Wars show. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely
It's
amazing. All right, so getting into it, starting with episode 7, Messenger. We start out seeing quite a bit of things that I actually didn't think we were going to see. I was not expecting to see Yavin. I thought that was going to be the last
yeah.
arc. We kind of jumped there. We saw some force healing. Cassian is prophesied as a messenger from a force healer. We see General Draven. Actually, I don't even know what his title is, if it was General or not. Um, but we didn't get any mention of the former rebels or the dangerous forest monsters. So I was curious what your guys' thoughts were on any of those topics.
Way fine with it. Don't give a shit. This is so much better than any of that. I do not understand why we're talking about that still. There's so much other shit, cool shit to talk about. Those people suck. This is what we're talking about. This is
Yeah, I
we're talking about the cutlery when we should be talking about the steak. This is insane. What are we doing here?
I I was not expecting to see any mention of those rebels or the monsters after I made my peace with the 1 year time jumps. The purpose of that story being a message to Cassian about the how important leadership is in rebellion. Even though we did spend what I would consider a unbelievable amount of time with those characters, considering how much story that they are cramming into to every arc. I That disappoints me more looking back, and I I like that arc less because of it, but it would not have been helped to see them here, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. It was more or less just kind of like, that's kind of interesting, but it doesn't detract from it at all because obviously I said that this arc is an 11 out of 10,
Mm-hmm.
so obviously I
Yep.
loved it. Just, curious that they made that big point about being on Yavin in that first arc to be like a big twist at the end of that second episode. Um, and I don't really know why, but I don't care because there was so much other stuff going on that I thought it was awesome. Willman returns from Gorman and recruits Cassian on behalf of Luthen to assassinate Dead Ramiro. I thought that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We get to see,
I'd like to talk about each of these points as well.
yeah, yeah.
We can talk about the hit on Dedra Miro because similar to last week, the structure or the dynamics between Cassian and Luthen is fundamentally different than last time we saw them, which is
Mm-hmm.
jarring, and I wish we got to see that explained. Um, Similar to how they went to Yavin, and Cassian has apparently inserted himself into this group of rebels on Yavin. Not just that he's like a member, that they desperately want him to take a leadership position, and Vel goes and has that conversation with Bix, like they really need Cassian, and that is a lot of off-screen development that I wish we had seen on screen. I can see how it happened. I understand how we get here, but that is just ripe storytelling. So I don't like that. The Force Healer, I am not prepared to commit to not liking it or liking it. Andor had been so removed from the Force and the Jedi, and it's not like I loved that because the thing I like about Star Wars is the Force and the Jedi, but it was such a distinctive element of Andor that it was so far removed. And like I consistently recommend Andor to my friends that don't watch Star Wars, and I say, "Oh, you literally don't need any prior knowledge to watch Andor. Just watch it. You don't even have to think that it's Star Wars. It's just a story about rebellion against an empire, and it's universal, and everything is very contained, and it all makes sense without any prior knowledge." And that is starting to go away. We're not quite to the point of fan service, but I do think we're edging closer. Not necessarily with the Force Healer, but what did you guys think about the Force Healer? Were you surprised to see it there? I'm not sure how I feel about Cassian's destiny being tied to the Force slash I don't know.
They're all tied
destiny.
to the Force. That's what it is, though.
I know
mean,
they are.
Yeah, I loved it. I
That's
thought it
what's-
was great, Luke. I think that the fact that like they use the Force like this in the fact of like it's almost like a gypsy person, right? Like that, which feels offensive even me just saying that the way I said it. I don't know why, but like I think I loved it seeing it in that context. I love seeing it scare Andor, which is exactly what Bix says as well. I thought that was really cool. I also like the fact that there's people that are being able to force heal that are just not, that are just cooks in the kitchen. They're not somebody that's destined to do greatness necessarily. And I think I do like the fact that Cassian is kind of set on this track. Like he says himself, like, you joined the rebellion long ago. You just didn't know it yet, and you're, coming home to yourself basically. And I think that is something that he has to consistently get reminded of through other people, and I think that's fantastic. I also, um, just to sit in the Yavin for a second, I love their hut. I thought it was so cool looking. I think it feels very Bright Tree Villagey, but also it feels very much in akin to the Acolyte as well with set design.
It's very
Just want to
homey.
throw
I
that
would
little
like to
nugget in there.
vacation in there.
Yeah, it looks great. Like it looks like the word cabana comes to mind. I think it's a fun word.
Yeah, set design across the board is unbelievable in this show. Like that's why I didn't spend an hour last week talking about set design and costume design and props and sound and music because I can't speak as eloquently about that as I can about the things that I don't like, which is a shame because I like more than I don't like. But for one, it's a podcast, and we don't know that much about this stuff other than, hey, that looks neat. But it does. It looks better than any other show I've ever seen.
It's
And
great. Yeah, I'm sorry, Max, go on. I want to hear your opinion on this Force Healer as well.
Well, I was
assume
just going to
we're
go back to
in
what we were
agreement with.
saying about it being like better than the original trilogy, right? Because what this show does well is it is removed from the Force and everything. So when they do have this Force healer, I feel like they do a really good job of making it feel like voodoo magic or like a hokey religion, as
Mhm.
Han Solo would say, right? Because we're so far removed,
Yeah.
and it makes sense that Cassian is so skeptical of this. And they dropped like some funny lines about like, oh, if Marva was here or whatever, and how she was wronged by Force healers, and she was like, oh, it was just the one Force healer. Like I thought that stuff was funny, but in A New Hope, Han Solo says like, "Oh, it's a hokey religion," and in the context of A New Hope, you're like, "How can you possibly call this a hokey religion? Like that is crazy." But in Andor,
Yeah.
it makes sense, and yeah, I think it gives gypsy vibes, like you said, Matt. So I think they
Yeah.
do that really well, and by staying away from the Force, it kind of makes that point a little bit better.
There's
I
something
agree
about-
with the gypsy vibes, and in the context of Andor, it makes sense, and I like that. And if you don't take out of Andor context from the greater Star Wars universe, it fits into the story really well. But this arc in particular is demanding you to take into account outside of Andor Star Wars content to make sense of all this content, for lack of a better term. And this particular beat with the Force healer would work better if you weren't doing that. But then, like, Yavin and the New Rebels and Draven and K2SO, like, you need, outside of just Andor Star Wars knowledge to see why any of this exists or is here. And doing both of those in the same arc is rubbing me the wrong way. Well, especially when it was the first time that Andor has ever asked you to understand anything outside of the show.
I think there's two things with that though. I think the closer you get to maybe literally the light side, good versus evil, I think the closer you get to that, you get closer to your truth, the closer you're gonna just inevitably get to the Jedi and the Force as well. And I think that we're nearing that. And then I think also the context you need for Andor, realistically, I mean, you don't have to know what happens in Rogue One, but in order to like understand Rogue One, you need to know what happens in A New Hope. So I think there is that
Oh, I disagree.
implied lineage. I mean, it's going to be enhance the viewing, I think, more for you. Because a lot of it is like hindsight. And this is a show that is done so well, you don't necessarily need the hindsight to be like, oh, man, like, same thing with the K2SO. When you see him in the back for the first time of the transport, you're like, oh, god damn. Like, you're so excited. And those moments pay off so much more if you have that context. So I think it's the same thing where you're like, oh, that Andor's mission, you said, is to basically go and die because he is going to blow up help blow up the Death Star by giving them plans. I think all of that just makes the experience so much better. And to have, if you're going to watch a Star Wars show, you have to have some sort of Star Wars context. I mean, if we're going to nitpick that, I mean, Ahsoka, which again, Ahsoka only relies on that, which I think is like, you can throw me this little nugget. That's fine, I think, if in comparison to like Ahsoka, you're like, who the fuck are these characters? What is any of this dynamic? But I think in Andor, it's just like, hey, remember, you've heard of Star Wars before, right? The one thing you know about Star Wars is probably the Force. Here's a little nugget of that. I think that's okay and implied. And especially with the subtitle, A Star Wars Story, under this season. This should be a circle jerk of us loving the show. What is going on here?
It's Luke
2
again.
weeks in a row.
I really like episode 8.
Yeah, all right. I would say let's get past episode 7, but we can't because I love the Dedra and Cyril hallway scene.
Yeah, we're still in the first few minutes. You also glossed over the part where where Wilman and Cassian are talking, and Wilman says, "You act like he's the enemy," and Cassian says, "That would be easier." Another just fantastic line that we only get in Andor.
It is. It's like, man, life is not easy.
Which is
that
an interesting
can apply
dynamic
to mother-in-laws
for Luthen.
as well.
Well. No,
What'd you say, Matt?
I'm ignoring that comment. I'm just gonna say what I'm gonna say. Because it's a good way to describe Luthen's dynamic and his relationship within the rebellion, which is like he is necessary, and I feel like everyone recognizes that and respects it. But like nobody likes him, and like everyone recognizes that like he's like almost evil, right? And it's like
Yeah.
Cassian wants to hate him. We're gonna talk later on in episode 9 about how Mon Mothma is more scared of him than she is of the Empire in that moment and stuff like that. So
Oh,
I
such a
think
good
it's
scene.
fantastic. But yeah, episode 7, a lot of build up, a lot of leading up to episode 8, because Willman returns from Gorman, recruits Cassian to assassinate Dedra, and they start to lay their plan for that.
Hmm.
We get some shots of Mon and Erskine back at the Senate, continue to struggle to gain sympathy, but is given a cryptic
Erskine,
message
great.
from the Gorman senator to stay safe. Yeah, Erskine, fantastic.
Yeah, he really showed. I mean, he shined. I think so well, and it was like, I mean, he's in other shows in animation, and I think it's cool to. I think he played a huge part as well. And are you gonna skip the hallway scene? So I want to talk about that for 2 seconds
Go
then
for it.
with Dedra, because the Dedra and Cyril scene, which we should have seen it coming from episode 8, I did not. But when they're in the hallway and Dedra is excited that they're going home, basically, and you know, for the first time, actually breaks and tells Cyril like to go home, to trust him, trust her, and then she kisses him. It is like such a great 180 from when we saw when she's like turn the lights off in the last arc as well. And we just never see that emotion in her ever. Like Cyril, we get that implied emotion. Implied emotion, is that fun? But
That's a
I think
hilarious
for
term, but that's very accurate.
yeah, right. I don't know how else to describe him, but I think Dedra in that moment specifically is just like so out of character, that, and she's like so excited to go home, and they're gonna be seen as heroes. That is like the heartbreaking scene. I think the first crack in which, when she is told not to ever let Cyril like know what's going on. I think it's for multiple reasons, right? And one of them, and I think you can see it in his face when she walks away, is, oh, there's more going on here this entire time than I even know about. And I think that Cyril literally is blinded to that and thinks he's doing that good job all the way until basically the end, and it's confirmed in episode 8, which we'll talk about later. But in that hallway scene, I think is the literal first crack of, he's like, oh, I actually might be getting played this entire time, and it's the beginning of a heartbreak.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't made that connection that that's the beginning of like the mental breakdown of Dedra, that Dedra at her best would never be so sloppy as to kiss a man on his lips in public or in private in light, and she's doing that the more I think about it, because she is
At work,
feeling emotions now that she has been spent her whole life suppressing, and as she is realizing this atrocity that she's bringing on, she can't suppress quite everything that she wants to. And yeah, that's a great call, Matt.
thank you.
And then continuing on with Gorman, we see all sorts of stuff happening. So the resistance is split. Dedra is ordered to proceed as planned. We see the propaganda machine at work with the reporters standing outside reporting on all of the attacks and the unreasonable Gorman resistance to imperial norms and other kind of weighted language like that, which I thought was funny and enjoyed seeing.
That's another example of what is typically poor writing, but because Andor does it so well, like in any movie or TV show, it's always panned like, oh, if you do your exposition through a breaking news
montage.
segment, you're just
Yeah.
lazy.
Right.
But because it's set up with the propaganda and it's not exactly true, and it works a lot better.
It does.
It
I
does.
hear what you're saying, but it works really well. And one part that I really like, walking through the street when Cyril confronts Rylands, or no, this isn't Rylands. This is the girl. He's talking to the girl in the street, and he kind of confesses a little bit about what's going on, and he is being genuine, and he kind of wants to help, and she literally slaps him in the face, and I love that moment, and I can picture in the writing room for this episode, everyone's sitting around being like, okay, and then he's gonna kind of confront her, he's gonna talk about what's going on because he wants to help, he's starting to crack a little bit. And then what is she gonna say? She needs to say something that's just a complete slap in the face. And someone's like, how about she just slaps him in the face? And they're like, that's perfect, actually. Because I feel like that slap in the face was like the perfect like a metaphor for where he is right there, and like how he's finally at a point where like maybe he's going to turn things around, make things right. And he's gone too far, and he literally just gets slapped in the face by the Resistance for it. So I like that part a lot. And then
The
Cassian
bellhop.
sees the bellhop again,
The-
and that was
Yes.
that was also super rewarding. And I like
It
that part. The
was.
bellhop turns out to be awesome. I really liked how the
Yes.
first time
He
we
was
saw
always
him,
awesome.
he was, but he was in the first time we saw him when he was an actual bellhop. Now he's like a concierge or whatever. He was kind of
yeah,
like he
he
was
ranked up.
quiet, and he was like
Who's
kind
that
of
story
nervous. He was quiet and he was nervous, and like he didn't really speak to Cassian, and Cassian kind of had to like draw some information out of him. And then in this one, a year passed, he worked his way up. He's much more confident. He's much more demanding. He's a member of the Resistance there and everything. And I feel like it came through in that small performance. I'm like that guy did a really good job. But the most notable part was when he was talking to him. And Cassian says, "I hope things work out for you." And then, of course, the bellhop says, "Rebellions
Oh.
are built on hope." And it was like, oh, that's where that came from, because Cassian then says
Yeah.
that to Jin, who says it to the rebel leadership when they're about to go to Scarif. And it's just so... I didn't feel like it was overly fan servicey. I really liked it. It felt rewarding.
I agree.
To have
I
like an
agree.
iconic-
It was so close, though.
It is.
It was
bordering it.
really close, but it wasn't.
Because I
fact
was
that it's
like, oh, why did
the
that happen? Does
bellhop.
that make sense? And then I was like, yes, it absolutely makes sense, because rebellions are built on hope, and this person is like the embodiment of it. Like, this is just a nobody,
Yes.
a relative nobody, like a random bellhop in a hotel, and he's the one who's like, that those are the people that are fueling rebellions. And so
If
I
this
thought
was-
that
The only
perfect.
the only
that
reason
it
I would
came from
argue
him.
that it wasn't perfect is because he's just tossing around the word rebellion. Like you can't say that out loud. Like Gorman wasn't even in open rebellion yet. I thought it might have been a little too early for that, but that is a nitpick, and I like that moment.
It's also because the bellhop says it. It's not some major character. Like if this was any other show, I think I would say different IP even. But I'm just gonna say show because I feel like in Star Wars they would even do this, and it would be one of those things where like the ending of an episode, K2SO would be like, rebellions are built on hope, and then Cassian would like wait a minute and then look at him and be like, what'd you say? And then it would cut the credits, and it'd be like the next episode would be called like rebellions are built on hope or something. Like that's how any other show I think would handle it. With the fact that he is a random bellhop is great. And then also the armored transport, the mustache guy who's like, are you going to give me a problem? And he's like, no. He gets his men in line. I love to jump ahead just because I'm going to forget about it because he's so unimportant in episode 8 that we see him dead and they rise up from, and that's like the first shot you see is that the commanding officer dead. I thought was great because he didn't go with his gut. He went with what the Empire told him to do, and he wound up dead because of it. And I love that shot just because he's, again, there's telling so many different stories consistently, and I just like one of those little ones where it's like, oh, he clearly is here being forced. He's training like basically 17-year-olds. That's what Dedra even says, they're children. And then just to see him being like, yeah, we're gonna be fucked. And then in episode 8, the same thing. He's repeating it over and over again. They're not listening to him, and then we just see a shot of him dead. It's like, yep, that is a small storyline that is started and concluded perfectly and depressingly, if you really think about it. Again, that's like the smallest storyline in this whole thing, obviously. I mean, calling it a storyline's a little bit of a stretch, but still. It's that kind of thing that elevate the show.
Yeah, I agree. I liked all that.
And then back on Yavin, Vel talks to Bix about Cassian potentially missing out on a promotion, which, at the time, the conversation kind of went under my radar, but then obviously at the end of episode 9, when we see that this conversation led the way to Bix's decision later, obviously carries a lot of weight and clearly meant a lot to Bix.
Yep.
I like that scene as well.
All right, but then moving on to the...
Before we move on, I'd like to just air all the parts that I didn't like.
Oh my gosh.
I circled them all.
All right. Just
there were 4. They were just the leftover remnants of what would have been a full season for this arc that they just threw at us, and it was unclear. Rylands is now advocating for peaceful protest for the Gormans to the Resistance. No, he brought Cassian in to help with the expertise to get tactical experience and plan the heist for the guns. He was not that was a complete reversal from his character last arc.
No, Lazine wanted
Willman.
Whatever, go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, yeah, we can talk about it if you disagree.
No, I don't even want to waste the time on it, but
of Cinta, I agree. There's so much more to talk about.
Willman is afraid to fly, that scene kind of came and went for no reason. I was expecting that to come back up, and maybe it still will. You remember that?
Yeah, they
when
did.
when
There was a
Cassian
couple
and
random
Willman.
scenes. There was a couple random scenes in these episodes that we'll talk about that I don't quite understand.
Well, that's one of them. When did Cyril lose favor with the Gormans? That also happened in that year off screen, and that would have been a great story to see unfold more naturally. And instead, we just see the end result, which is a shame. And the last one, when Captain Kaido is introduced, it gave tell not show vibes. Like in a longer version of this season, I think he would have been a character for several episodes prior, and instead he just sort of showed up and was butting heads with Dedra Miro, and his character was sudden and not well established in my mind.
Here's what I'll say about the complaints.
It was established.
I'm never gonna not be pro more Andor. Is the thing is that like I could, but not too much. I think 5 seasons would have been honestly too much. I think 3 or 4 would have been fantastic. I think some of these could have been hashed out a bit more, like you're saying. Some of them, like Woman flying, like it's not. We haven't explored that with Obi-Wan, and that's not the
right. That's not exactly
part of that character.
That's not exactly a hole from the year time jump, but that's just an odd moment that I would expect to see resolved and haven't yet.
But I understand what you're saying, and I understand these grievances and the fact that it's again that time jump thing. I fully just have bought into this. I think since the first arc of the time jump thing, because I think like if you don't like an arc, it's gonna end pretty quick anyway. And I think I know the first season isn't arced away by a year, but still, I think that different time has passed. So I do understand those grievances, but I also think that they're doing a perfect show. So it's really again, I'm pretty pro more Andor, but I'm pretty anti changing what we just saw.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's a good way of
I'm ready to talk about episode 8, which I am fully on board for. I agree that this is the best episode of Andor, and therefore the best episode of television.
It was amazing.
It's amazing.
After watching this episode, I literally sat there for a minute and I was like, I don't even want to watch the next one. Like, I feel like I need a second to digest this. Like, imagine when we're getting Mandalorian on a week-to-week basis. It's like the episodes are like 25 minutes after trailers and credits and everything. It's like less than 20 minutes. It's like being in a desert and you're just getting like a little drop of water. Andor, 3 episodes a week is like drinking from a fire hose. Like after these 2 episodes, I was like, I don't even want to watch the third. Like I need a second to just like calm down and digest everything that just happened. And then on top of that, everything that happened in the third episode. Yeah. Who Are You? Absolutely blew my socks off.
I agree. I was not prepared.
So we start with the locals taking to the square in protest. Cyril is confronted by Rylans. And one little nugget that I kind of picked up on my second watch is the TIE fighters kind of like flying low over the center, the town square. That is diabolical. Like, this is a town square where Tarkin landed and crushed to death 400 Gormans in the Tarkin massacre. Yeah. And these people are just like flying by low to the ground right over their heads. Like, they know what they're doing. Like, the Empire is diabolical.
I didn't think about that angle. That is an extra poor taste. I kept thinking about how they did that on Aldhani, and I remember at the time people were like, oh, the Imperials are so mean, they're just like doing flybys over these innocent farmers. And I was like, that doesn't seem too bad. That of all the things the Empire does, I can let this one slide. But yeah, given that extra context, this is sinister.
Yes.
There's also, I love the scene of Edie when there's the spider, the Gorman spider is on her desk when she's watching the news.
Oh, I didn't catch that. That's good.
It's just such a small little thing that I was like, oh, because he collects all of those things, and I was like, it's just so funny that like either whether he bought another one, whether he sent it, he sent it home with his mom, whatever. I'm just like, it's like small little details like that. I think they're so fun.
And then there was also the moment where they come to evacuate all the Imperials, and he's just in his house playing with his spiders. I don't know if he's like posing them or just cleaning them or something, but like when it establishes that shot, he's just touching both spiders. Like he just likes his spiders. A little creepy guy.
Creepy guy. He's just an odd dude. I wonder if that was a directing choice or an acting choice. And
Well, I heard it was an acting choice for him to be laying on his bed in that manner in the first arc.
I did hear
And so
that
now I
too.
feel like it
Yeah.
was an acting choice because that is a choice. That was like the best part of Cyril's character in that arc, and that was
And he's
I
a
rarely
great
hear
actor. What's the actor's
he
name?
is
I need to look it up. But
Kyle
I mean,
Soller.
praise to that
And
man. I mean, he is a
yes,
great actor, and this was one of the episodes, like I said, where I can differentiate the acting from the writing,
yeah,
because obviously all of it was well written. But there was three distinct parts in this episode that were just so awesome. The first one I kind of glossed over when Cyril is confronted by Rylance in the street. And they have that kind of back and forth, and Cyril's like getting fed up because he's like trying to like get him to listen,
yes,
like this is what I was trying to do, like this is what's going on, and like Rylance isn't having any of it, and Rylance has that line where he says, "What kind of being are you?"
hmm
And it was, yeah, it just hits so hard, and you can tell that it hits Cyril, and he's just like, no, like this isn't what I was actually trying to do. Like he's
yep,
realizing as this is going on, like that he got as well, and he has to die by the lie. Because he says
hmm
about the mining equipment happening on the other side of the planet or whatever, and Cyril
Oh, I love
tries
that.
saying like those are rumors, and he's like, how can you say that? How can you say that right now? He's like, it's just
Yep.
absolutely not true. So I really liked that encounter with Rylance in the street.
I think from that moment on, the tension in the building does not stop because you move
Yeah.
right after the feeling. I feel like we've all had this sort of feeling, obviously not to this degree, where like I think something's gonna break out. But when Andor goes back down to the bellhop to return his key or whatever, like there's just like this weird tension of like he's like I might not be back, and he's like whatever, you never checked in, blah blah. Like I don't know, there's just like this tension building and like this feeling of like this animosity going on in the air, and I feel like that electricity in the air is like palpable, and I feel like you've been in some sort of moment in that within your life, and it's like I don't know. You could just the music is fantastic this entire episode too. I mean I don't even know, and the cutting back and forth between Cyril and Andor. You're like, oh my god, I didn't even think about them seeing each other. Like I was so concerned about this Dedra story, and I don't know when Luke. I owe you. This is what I was really gonna come to the table with. Is like I just owe you. I think everyone does just an apology of like you could say Cyril's a bad guy or a good guy, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter, and that's I think even debatably the best and the saddest part of all of Star Wars, which we'll talk about later. But like Dedra and Cyril might be the my favorite characters in the show, and it's because I think Denise Go and Kyle Stoller are maybe some of the best actors in Star Wars of all time, and they just per chance get to act together as well, which is does wonders for the show, and that's saying a lot, especially considering Stellan Skarsgård is in the show, and I mean, obviously the list goes on, and I'm just talking about two of these people, but it's like their performances are both so good that
Yeah,
is
and
insane. Anyway,
that
sorry, yours.
segues perfectly into the second part that I wanted to talk about regarding Kyle Solar's performance. And that's obviously the confrontation between Cyril and Dedra, where he yells at her and she freaks out because it's like the first time clearly that this is happening. And then he grabs her and he chokes her. And I'm like, oh my God. And
Yep.
like, I'm having such conflicted feelings because I'm like, okay, well, Dedra's evil. He's kind of coming around to the right thing, but he's also choking her out. I mean, this is obviously like the
Yep.
whole purpose for my entire intro joke about domestic violence being part of a redemption arc, and I'm like, it's not like he's not a good guy. He's not a good guy yet, but he's realized
Nope.
in this moment that he's messed up.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
There's
wild watching a man choke out his girlfriend and being like, "Wow, personal growth. Good for him."
Exactly.
yeah. It is, and oh, man, it's so bad. It's that's like an amazing scene because of the acting, but also because like you feel so bad for Cyril because you understand that he got, but also Dedra is. It seems like madly in love with Cyril at the end of the day. Like we got that, and then we kind of faded a little bit maybe, and then she clearly loves this man. I mean, she kissed him in public as well, and you feel so bad for. I mean, I did. You feel so bad for Dedra though at the same time where she's just like he was getting these promotions. She was giving him what he wanted, but like really what he wanted, I think at the end of the day was for the truth and to be in her position, right? And that was just never going to be him. And I think that's unfortunately the truth. He just wasn't that kind of person, and that's fine. He was better off for it. But then you just feel so bad for Dedra, where she I think also was like, oh my god, like I fucked up as well. And then this is very similar to a scene in Succession at the very end of Succession spoiler for Succession, Jeremy Strong's character Kendall does not become the successor like he was going to be the entire time.
That's what that show's about.
Yes, because Roman, his younger brother, played by Kieran Culkin, basically screws it all up. And at the end, he basically Kendall yells, "But I'm the eldest boy," and rushes him like a child and grabs his face and does almost the exact same thing. And there's something so childish, I think, about like grabbing someone's face or choking someone out to be like, that's like scary, but it's like you don't do that unless you're like a child or really serious about it. And I think that there's like this weird conflict in between when this happens where you're like, I don't think Siri will ever kill Dedra, but insane scene that I will be thinking about for a very, very long time.
It's also another credit to Denise Goes. Am I saying that right?
I say Denise Go, but I have no idea. Did I say that earlier? I said it earlier. Now I don't know how I pronounced it.
Well, I was confused on the first name because I thought I was maybe getting it similar to Dedra, but it is Denise Go. A credit to her acting that will fly under the radar. Not her acting, but this scene will fly under the radar because she had so many excellent moments. Like when Cyril is choking her, it's hard to display if it's like a threat, like I'm gonna choke you if you don't answer, or if it's like I am choking you and you can't breathe. Like she is getting choked. She really sold that. She was not able to breathe, and it was an attack in the moment.
Also, Max, I'm very interested because you said 3 scenes, and I would definitely say there's 4 scenes that we need to talk about in acting wise, and one of them is also Dedra. By yourself,
okay, I was talking specific to Cyril. I said there were 3 Cyril scenes.
Jesus. Okay, well, let's go back then. Let's say there's 4 Andor scenes, 4 Cyril scenes. Okay,
there's a Major Partagaz. There's the Major Partagaz scene where Major Partagaz is in it less and less, unfortunately, because just him in a boardroom is some of the best TV I've seen in my entire life. And when he starts that conversation and Dedra starts talking and he just says calmly, "You seem animated." I'm like, oh, I love that moment.
That's great.
That's Imperial talk for bitch. Calm down.
I think we can talk about this in episode 9 as well. And there's not much to talk about really because I don't want to go down this route necessarily. But I think why Andor is so good, and it relates to this episode specifically, is I was gonna say because we get like this police battalion guard armor which we've never seen before that are like a step below stormtroopers that look like they're like a SWAT team, like a ballistic team. I'm coming up with the right words as I speak. And I love that because it feels so real. And I think that, like, again, I don't want to go down this route necessarily, but I think, I think Star Wars works best, and that's when it was, in the original trilogy too, is when it mirrors real life, right? And I think that these episodes mirror really relevant things, but I think beyond that, things within history. I think you can look at different wars, you can look at different, you can look at different like battles, you can look at different cultural things going on. And I think you can very much relate to those things when you learn history, when you're looking through them on social media. And I think this episode, beyond being amazing TV, is weirdly relatable. And obviously, there's a lot of like we talked about like Les Mis and like maybe the French Revolution and something, but like it's obviously very akin to that as well. I'm not smart.
Dude, they started singing. That's exactly what I wanted.
They start singing, and then I don't know if you guys noticed at the very end when Andor's driving away and then the TIE fighter flies up, it looks like France. I mean, it literally is the same exact buildings from Inception when they're in France, which I thought was, again, whether it's current day, whether it's 100 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago, it's like I think this stuff that's relevant is palpable because you've learned about it before. And I think that's what Star Wars does really well. And I think that's why Andor is more grounded. When we talk about Mandalorian or Ahsoka or Skeleton Crew being more pulpy, I think that's what we're talking about. This, I think, is a reason why it's so good. I think that is a massive part of it too. Again, even subconsciously.
Yeah, this is going to go down a rabbit hole, but I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the actual armory that was built on Palmo, because you get like a really nice opening shot of the cityscape, and it sticks out like a sore thumb. And
it's huge.
I think Paris is a good analogy, actually, because, the Eiffel Tower is iconic and all that, but it is a disgusting statue. Like, it does not look good, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe
they're
that's
lucky it got famous.
But it's the same thing with the armory. This Imperial armory sticking straight up out of this town head and shoulders
Yeah.
above everything else. Like, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it's just like a disgusting monument to itself in a place where it's
Yeah.
not welcome. And I don't know, visually they nailed that.
That is
Yep.
an example of the 1 year time jump working in favor for this season, which I'll bring it up in order to be fair. When they mention it in the first arc, and then in the second arc, it's a year later and it's like half built, and it's a problem. And then in the third arc, it's all the way built, and it's a bigger problem because we have those year time jumps. So that worked out perfect.
Max, this is more for offline as well, but did you take a step back for a minute and just get aggravated because this is kind of what we were writing for Rikers and the fact that they're taking over for Kyber basically. They're building a section of the city off. They're building different things. They're basically going to drill. Like it's kind of the it's kind of the core idea.
There are some
in a way.
similarities to our fan fiction, but no, that's not why I was bitter about it. I was bitter about it because I don't like the French.
Yeah.
But then, so we continue to build up for the massacre. We get a great scene with Captain Cato, which I thought just perfectly captures the evil mindset of the Empire. When he tells Dedra he's waiting for her orders, and he says, like, let's like be sure about chain of command here. You are the finger, I am the trigger.
Yep.
That is evil.
That's
Like,
another
that
great
is
line.
It's such a good, like, dehumanizing way to remove yourself from the atrocities that you're about to commit. Like, hey, I'm just following
Yes.
orders, basically, is what he's getting at, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not the finger, I'm the trigger. You just
Yep.
point and shoot, and I do it.
But also, it just it uncomplicates things for her. I think too, though. It's I think it's a slap in the face at the same time, as well as being able to be like, yeah, just give me the order and I'll do it, and I don't give a shit. Like Dedra's performance again, she's so good in that scene where she looks for the first time really conflicted because I feel like she's seeing what's going on outside and she's been living there for a year, and I think that in that moment it's like, oh my god, like it is. And it feels like one of those pressurized moments where it's like you don't have a choice. You can't take a moment. You need to answer like right now, basically. Like this is the Empire. Like this is a do or die. And if she doesn't do, she will die presumably. Like this is not a option, basically.
Yeah.
And you feel terrible in that. I felt terrible in that moment and that tension building of like Cyril's within the crowd and you're like, oh my god, wrong place, wrong time. And then Andor's there, trying to get the perfect shot. And in the midst of this battle, not moving, being like, this is my goal, is to take out Dedra, was so stressful. Because he's just behind that one pillar the entire time. I'm like, oh my god.
Max, what did you say that quote was? Because I also wrote it down. I want to make sure we have the same one.
You are the finger, I am the trigger. That's the only part that I quoted. The part leading up to it, they say something about the chain of command.
Well, that would have bothered me then if I didn't bring it up again, because I think we understood that quote differently. For one, he says that I am the trigger supervisor, you are the finger, and I think it's a display of dominance over her operationally, that he is the one that's going to be making the decisions, even if she appears to be making the decisions. It's really him at the top.
That's how I kind of took it as well, and I think that's why. Again, I think it's depending on. That's why the line's so good though, because I think you could see it either way or both ways.
I think it can work on multiple levels, yeah, but I mean, he was still waiting for her order.
He was waiting for the order that she was receiving. It wasn't her order.
Yeah, it all comes down.
He was waiting for the ISB.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess there are a couple different ways that you could interpret that, although I think that's pretty consistent, though, with itself. Are you? You're saying the opposite? So you're saying that the trigger is controlling over the finger?
Once the finger goes down, once the finger is pulled, the trigger does all the work, right? Like that's kind of the thing.
Well, I think you just wrote down the quote and are wrong. He says that I'm the trigger supervisor and you're the finger. So he is the one he's the one supervising the trigger and she's the one that's going to pull it, but it's his decision. She's just the tool that is going to be doing it.
No, I think it's comma supervisor. He's talking to her. She is supervisor Miro. I'm the trigger supervisor.
Oh,
you're the finger.
No. Now we're talking about complete. All right, so now I'm very glad I brought this up because this is completely different. I'll go rewatch that scene because that would play. No, he is the trigger supervisor. Well, I mean, semantically, it could go either way, I guess.
Oh. Honestly,
all right. Well,
let's move on.
Yeah, while you pull it up.
Yeah, move on.
Way. I want to talk about the actual massacre and the starting of it because it was diabolical, and we knew that this was
It
coming. We
is.
knew that um, this city was a powder keg set to explode, and this kind of standoff where the Empire's out there and they're going out to confront the protesters. Obviously, the Empire is armed. They know that the citizens are also armed, but they're all waiting for something to go off. And for some reason, I just did not realize that the plan was to have an Imperial sniper kill one of their own men. And it's like, of course you would. That's exactly how you would frame it on the
Yeah.
locals. And then they open fire and everything, and all the panic ensues and everything. But I was like, for some reason, I was still thrown by it. It was still a twist to me when I saw that that's how it happened. I was like, okay.
Yep.
And there was a funny moment earlier when I was watching it, because I was watching it with Luke, and he even said when they like came and knocked on the door to get C-roll earlier in the episode, he was like, "Oh, well, it's nice that they're packing up all the Imperials and making sure that they're safe." And I was like, "Oh, that is nice. That is something that you wouldn't think that the Empire would do." And they turn around and immediately kill themselves in order to frame the locals, and it's like, okay, there's the Empire we all know.
All right, good job vamping. I'm very excited to talk about this more because we're both right in a sense, and it's the way he says it. So he even says, "Let's not confuse the chain of command here. I'm the trigger supervisor. You are the finger." And that's the way he says it. And I think it's very clear that it's about chain of command and he's supervising the trigger. The way the subtitles are written, it's I am the trigger, comma, capital S supervisor, and you are the finger.
Yes,
And
because
so,
that's her title. She's Supervisor Miro. He calls her Supervisor Miro earlier.
A trigger
She
supervisor
is supervisor.
isn't a thing, though.
Yeah, I don't think this is up for debate like you think it is.
I agree. This is insane. This is.
Oh, I thought you were on my side, Matthew.
No, I agree. I agree with in the way he says it. That I think that he is trying to insert dominance, and so I think what that scene is trying to show is that even though our main characters are Cyril and Dedra, other characters within this universe and in this organization are doing the same exact thing. Of they're also power hungry, and she's gonna get an order from somebody else, and then she's gonna tell him. But I think he's like, "Hey, I'm ready for battle. You clearly have not been in battle before, even though she has." And I think that he is ready. He's gonna be like, whatever. Even if you say, whenever you say yes, this shit's gonna go off the chain the way I say it is because I'm gonna be on the battlefield. And I think that's the way. And I think we saw earlier when he's trying to insert his dominance against the guy with the mustache as well. I think again, this is trying to show that this is not a for the weak organization as well.
I feel like then prefacing that quote with "Let's not confuse the chain of command. I'm the trigger, you're the finger." That would imply you are ahead of me in the chain of command. But when he starts saying "Let's not confuse the chain of command," it's in order to imply that he's on top of her in the chain of command.
Yeah, that's exactly how I interpret it, because I think the whole quote is to remove Kato, is that his name?
Yes.
Kaido,
Mhm.
from the decision making. Because the whole point is it's like it's a you're taking the human aspect out of it. Like he's saying like, look, I'm just going to do what I'm told. Let's keep in mind the chain of command, because the whole thing, going back even farther, started with her asking him what he needs. And he said, what I need is a safe ride home or something like that.
Yeah.
Because he's like, don't ask me what I need. Like you are ahead of me. Like you tell me what to do and I will do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like a very imperial thing to say, but you are kind of convincing me.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable moving on from this now.
Oh yeah.
Well, I'm
Because
glad that we
before-
spent more time on
yes.
it, because I really like that line. So I'm glad that I brought it up, because
It's great.
I like it too, but for apparently different reasons.
oh, that's what's so good about this writing, I guess.
Oh my gosh, I just watched it again. It is so clear that he's saying that he's the trigger supervisor.
That's
You
not a
guys-
thing, Luke. That's not.
I mean, she's not really a finger either. Like it's a metaphor, Matthew.
This is
Luke,
the
when
exact
you're like,
same
I'm gonna
thing.
put my yeah.
This is the exact same thing, Luke, that we try to tell Matt when in in Star Wars Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, he thinks
No.
that those people say goals, and we're like, no, he's saying ghouls, and Matt's like, no, I think they're saying goals, and it's like, there's subtitles, like go off the subtitles. That's what they're saying. That's
No,
what this
subtitle-
is.
this
Goes,
is-
comma,
The
even
subtitles
capital
are the correct
supervisor.
words. It's just the tense that the subtitles got wrong. Let us know in the comments now, because this is hotly
Yes,
contested. I am very confident in my own point of view on this.
Something I want to bring up too that I think they're trying to show visually is one of those things where, history is told by the victors. And I think that is very much the narrative here too. Obviously the Gormans are slaughtered, but also there's a lot of dead Imperials. They make a big point to show how many dead stormtroopers there are on the steps. They make a big point to show how many dead Imperials there are. But that's obviously just because of the numbers as well. But I also
It's
feel
still like
like
100 to 1.
yes, exactly. But so obviously Gorman Massacre, yes. Not to diminish them, but also I think they did put up more of a fight than they thought. And so I think when they're talking about this, and that's one of those things too, right? The Empire doesn't want to be seen as weak. So no one's talking about their body count, which I think is, in turn really depressing and really dark in the fact that there's the Gorman Massacre, again, rightfully so, that's named that. But then I like the fact that they're showing how many dead people are on, the Empire side as well. And that stuff is lost to history because they don't want to be seen as weak. Um, that's not even mentioned because no one gives a shit. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but like on the Empire side, I think that's like such a dark thing as well.
Well, the thing that the show does so well is it does show you how well propaganda works, right? To the point
Yeah.
that even Matt is echoing it on this podcast, which is ridiculous. They massacre the
What?
Gormans, and Matt's over here saying, "Well, no, the Empire lost a lot of good folks too." Um, but the whole thing, it's like it's baked in half truth. Like they're talking about like these outside
Yeah.
agitators and all these like terrorist attacks happening against the Empire stationed on Palmo, and it's like, yeah, yeah, that is happening. Like they're not wrong about that.
Yeah.
And they did steal all these weapons, and they did bring these weapons to the square, like full well
Mhm.
knowing that there was probably going to be a showdown.
Yep.
Obviously the whole thing starts with the Empire's hand, and then they kind of blame it on them. So it's like they're wrong, like they're lying. It is a
Yeah.
massacre. It is staged, and it is propaganda. But you see how they get there, and
Yeah.
I find that fascinating, and I love that aspect of it. And even in episode 9, we get like some talking heads on the news, or maybe it was the senators when they kind of start giving their speeches talking about the imperial martyrs on
Mhm.
Gorman. And I was like, oh man, that's crazy that they're gonna go down in history as like that, And
Mhm.
way jumping the gun, we'll talk about it more in episode 9. But one of the thoughts that I think Luke had when we were watching, when they were talking about Imperial martyrs, is like, oh man, Cyril died there. He's probably gonna die a quote unquote Imperial martyr, when that was the last thing that he would have wanted.
Mhm.
Because he started to realize at the very end, when it was too late, that what they were doing was actually wrong. He has all this pent up aggression. He finally sees Andor, and they confront each other. So let's talk about it. The Cyril Cassian confrontation. Luke, you said on a previous episode that at some point they were going to meet, and it was going to be fireworks, and it did not let down. That was one of
No.
the best fight sequences in all of Star Wars, and there was no lightsabers. There was hardly any blaster. It was just hand-to-hand combat and raw emotion, and it was so great. And I mean, obviously, we all know how it plays out. He finally gets the upper hand. Cyril's about to shoot him dead. Finally, get his vindication, that he's going to kill Cassian, this person who he's dedicated his life over for the last 4 years or so. And in the end, Cassian looks at him and he just says, "Who are you?" And it's in that
I know.
moment you see
Oh.
in Cyril's eyes as he kind of like starts to lower his weapon a little bit. He doesn't even know who I am. No one's gonna know who I am. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Like everything that he did was for the wrong reasons. He's realizing that the Empire is wrong, and he realizes that no one's going to know this. He's been
That
hunting this guy for years who doesn't even know who he is.
exactly. That's what's funny, Max. That you said at the very end that my exact point is that Andor doesn't even know who he is after he's been hunting him for years and years and years, and it is the most depressing moment I think in all of Star Wars, like all of it. Like I don't think there's any other more depressing moment because even Cyril is again. I liked Cyril in season 2 quite a bit, and I'm excited once this show's over to rewatch the full thing in one go, not one go, but over a week or so. And I'm like, that is the saddest moment. And I also, I don't know. Luke, I feel like you have so much to say about it, and I want to go on. And I want to talk about how I feel like they subtly grow his hair out longer and how Mon Mothma looks slightly older every episode. Yes, I do, because I think that stuff is amazing, and I think it's really subtle. But I think just the way Cyril looks so defeated in that moment. He's bloodied and battered, and he's holding a blaster. I think it is one of the coolest shots in all of Star Wars as well.
Mm-hmm.
When they meet, it's literally fireworks, and it could not have ended, I think, better in the fact that, like, Max, I think, for those who don't know, Max's not biggest fear, but, sudden deaths within movies, which, who's to combat that? That is a very real thing. And then Pulp Fiction is the best example, is when they hit a bump and then his head gets blown off, basically. This is equivalent to that. I jumped when Cyril got shot, and I could not believe that's the ending of Cyril Karn. I was like, well, certainly he's got to come back or something, right? Like, and I was like,
know.
well, no, right? I could not. My jaw was on the floor, and I have not. When we started this podcast, I cannot remember the exact moment. I think it was in Mandalorian season 2, once Luke Skywalker showed up, and we felt so buzzed. There was no one to really talk to. There's no, besides the three of us, really, that were on the same page of Star Wars. There's nobody necessarily that we want to go on YouTube and figure out. That's why we started this podcast. Not to diminish our podcast, just nothing fit for us at the time. But I got the same exact sense, and I've had the same exact feeling all day that I've been buzzing. I mean, the episode was so amazing, and I feel Star Wars is so good when it is, you want the good guys to win, but then when they introduce this gray area, and you're just like, I didn't want Cyril to necessarily win because he's on the Imperial side. That's what he was working for. But man, I just did not want it to end like that, and I'm weirdly glad it did, because it makes for amazing TV and everything. But like, his character arc is so fucking sad. Like, I'm gonna go to bed tonight, like, and have nightmares about it. I think, like, it's haunting. Like, that's the best way I can say is that it's haunting.
Yeah, I literally couldn't sleep last night. Restlessness finds me very infrequently. I watched it at Max's house, got home around midnight, laid in bed until 1:30, and started watching it again because I just could not get it out of my head. People talk often about the emotional stakes in, usually around lightsaber fights, but I do agree in lightsaber fights that, like, oh, the emotional impact is important. We have never seen a fight, lightsaber or not, be so emotional for exclusively one party. That just never happens. You cannot write. There's never been another story where only one person has such an emotional investment in this fight, and the other person has no idea who they are. So that element was great. The choreography was, but borderline bad. Like, I'm thinking, we had that fight between Bo-Katan and Axe Woves, where I think it's the second now best fight scene without lightsabers in Star Wars, where they're using jetpacks and wrist cables and flamethrowers, and it's your least favorite episode of The Mandalorian somehow, and it's a great fight. And now they're just like Cyril Karn with a steel chair to the back of Cassian Andor, and it's like they didn't even give them any choreography. They just told Kyle Soller, like, all right, just go in there and go fucking nuts. Like, you understand this character extremely well. You're untrained. I'm sure Kyle Soller is untrained. Like, just throw shit at him. And it's so visceral, and the fight scene is amazing. I won't say redemption. I would never have said redemption arc, because redemption arc implies he was a villain, and he was never a villain. But he never did have the hero arc that I wanted for him, and he was so close. He was on that path. Like, he spent. You can go back and watch our Cyril Karn episode from before the season. The whole first season, he just rode down the middle of a Y turn and never turned left or right towards hero or villain. He was just a character waiting to find his purpose and what he wants to be, and he's been manipulated by his mother, and he wants his life to be ordered, and he values law, and he expects and wants the Empire to be that, and he finally found out that it wasn't, and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to be a rebel. He just doesn't want to be with Dedra right now. And the tragedy of that scene, where he doesn't know, like, his whole world has shattered around him, and he is nothing. Like, for the first time, he could go out and be his own person, and he never gets to, because as soon as he sees Cassian, he is just, all the rage comes straight back. I mean, talk to any man that hasn't been to therapy yet. When you're feeling more than 3 emotions at a time, default to anger and just go nuts with it. And he just, I I said the episode 8 is my favorite episode in all of Andor, and it's not even perfect. There are still problems that I have with it that I'll get to, but the emotional impact of that Cyril Karn fight carries this so high up to the top.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that I think that's when he freaks out about with Dedra too, right? Because he realizes that Dedra is doing the same exact thing that his mom did to him, which is absolutely controlling, but almost in a more secretive way, which is I think why he freaks out and chokes her and then goes off. And like you said, look, it is a tragedy in the fact that he's finally able to live his life, then just isn't able to. Um, and it's and honestly, again, he gets shot. Obviously, like realistically, is he the guy trying to defend Andor? Probably not. Realistically, I don't know if he can even see him. I think he just wants to shoot Cyril.
Drylands?
I think so too.
Yeah, so
I wish that relationship was more thoroughly explained over the course of the weeks and months prior to this scene.
But it is again, like you said, so tragic, and I'm gonna be thinking about it for a very, very long time. Like I said, I think some of the best acting and the fact, and one of the biggest things that I want to see was like Dedra. Like I want to see what she's like after finding out Cyril's dead. We don't get that moment. Presumably, I mean, we see. Again, I want to talk about her acting when she is in the room by herself, and presumably she's freaking out about what just occurred, the Gorman massacre, not Cyril's death, presumably. Is the way I took it.
Wait, are you saying we did see that, or you want to see that?
I want to see that.
We did see that when she was in the room. She was freaking out and yanking at her collar.
Yeah, we saw her have a panic attack, but I don't think that we know that she knew that Cyril was dead. But right. I don't think we'll see that. And in an interesting turn of direction here between you and I, Matt, I don't think we will see that, and I don't think we should, because whether or not Cyril is dead doesn't matter to Dedra. I think either way, he's dead to her, because he will never, if he was alive, she would still never see him again.
That's true. But Max, when she's in the room by herself, I think that's her having a panic attack because of the order she gave to basically slaughter all these people. And I think
she's sad about her own genocide, yeah.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
I thought that's what you were saying. You wanted.
Oh, no,
He wants a scene where she's sad about Cyril.
Oh, okay.
Not even sad about Cyril, just like to learn about it.
Yeah,
because
reacting about Cyril.
Because it's a weird turn for her too, where she doesn't want him to leave. They find they're tracking him, and then they lose track of him, and it's interesting to like, okay, what is she gonna do? Like, is she gonna try to kill Cyril? Is she going to forcibly make him love her still? Like, I was just so interested in that storyline and what her thoughts were, because again, she let him know what was going on, and that was a mistake. That's the one time she slipped up, and it was a big mistake. Big mistakey.
Well, I have a hot Dedra take that we'll get to in a minute, but I do want to talk a little bit more about the massacre itself, because in my opinion, one of the scariest parts of the whole thing was when they deployed those KX units. Those
the barrier
were
scene?
scary as hell.
Yeah.
And look, we've seen them before already in Rogue One. I've played against them in Jedi Fallen Order, and these weren't new to me, but seeing them in action with no weapons, just smacking people all the way across the courtyard, throwing them into walls, kicking these barriers into people was terrifying. And then at the end, when they finally start to leave the plaza and Willman catches up with Cassian and they're running away, and one of them starts chasing him and starts running after him fast, that was terrifying. That gave me nightmares.
It's I think great way to use. Obviously, we have an emotional connection to the K2 units, but versus the Dark Troopers in Mandalorian, where they're just kind of like, oh well, we can't kill people, we can just Luke Skywalker can kill robots. Which that aspect doesn't necessarily bother me, but this is such a great way to use droids, I think, and to be like, oh yeah, they are actually a big force, because again, in Mandalorian, it's like we don't really get to see those be deployed in a spooky way before to see how easy Luke's able to slice them down, but then being able to see these K2 units be like, holy shit, like when the one kicks the barrier and just crushes somebody, and then the freakiest one is when he picks up the girl, can't think of her name, and just throws her across the courtyard, and she hits the wall, but then her neck snaps. You're like, Jesus Christ! I was like, I could survive that, and then I heard the neck snap, and I was like, oh my god, maybe I couldn't survive that. Oh, it just was like, light comes at you fast, I don't know. It was It was spooky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean this as a knock, but it is a lot easier to show the terrifying force of both a stormtrooper and the KX units when they're attacking unarmed civilians.
Yeah, that's true. And also,
but you are
honestly,
exactly
but
right.
effective.
I don't care that the guy got like a redemption arc from killing Cinta. Fuck that guy. I don't like him. I want him to die still. He can smash droids all you want.
Yeah, that's my problem with this episode is that they did not establish any emotional connection between us and all these Gormans. Like the only one that I cared about was the bellhop, and he had the least amount of screen time. Like it just feels out of character for Andor. Like we cared so much about so many characters that we had so much less time with, and like we keep talking like, oh, this character who's I don't know their name, and this character who I barely remember, and it's like why did they not establish stronger emotional connections between us and those characters? I'll never understand that.
They could have if they had
And
more
then the other
time.
thing-
I'm okay with sacrificing time in order to move it along because
I agree, and that these characters are not worth it. These characters were boring to me too. They're plot devices to be like they're gonna be the underground rebellion, which sounds cool in theory, but I'm just like
That's
I
like
don't
saying
really
Kino Loy
care
was a
about
plot
them.
device, though, and it like think
He
about what
was,
it could have
but
been.
yeah, right.
But
What
I
could
don't-
have been? I mean, these characters obviously. It's easy to say like, well, not for these characters after only seeing them for 3 episodes or whatever. But I mean, to Luke's point, we
5!
would care about them if this was an entire season or something like that. But regardless, not necessarily the characters, but just the bigger story to be told. I'm okay with moving it along. Like I feel like it still did its job, even if some of those character deaths were a little less emotional than they could have been. Because you're right, when we were watching it, there was a couple times where you have this feeling of like, oh no, oh I think we knew that one, and so yeah, like
To
if you fleshed it
me-
out over a longer season,
Yeah.
we could have known and recognized all these characters much more, and would have made all those character deaths more impactful. But I mean, that's the trade off. Like I think I would rather get the 3-episode abridged version with less
Yeah.
impactful deaths of those characters than a 12-episode season of just that.
Yeah.
Um,
Also,
I can't
One
believe
thing
you're
I do
saying
want to say
that,
about the
but-
bellhop that you mentioned, though, because
the
he was
bomb.
awesome. He sacrificed himself.
he
he
was
saved a
great.
couple people cowering in the hotel lobby or whatever. He told them to run away, and then he threw that bomb to take out a couple stormtroopers. And I mean himself. I'm sure that he died doing that. But you know,
Not dead on
rebellions are
screen, you
built
don't
on
know.
hope.
This one's a smaller nitpick, but when I will bring it up because we're talking about perfection here, and so I do hold it to a very high standard, and I'm hoping you guys can wrap this up for me right now because I did watch it twice and it jumped out at me both times, and I feel like I'm just missing something. Before the massacre breaks out, or maybe just at the beginning, they're like up by the monument and they're picking into the concrete with like pickaxes, and they're trying to get something or doing something. What was that about?
I don't know. I noticed that the second time I watched it. Yeah, they
Oh, I
they
did
made a
not
point of
notice
like looking like you can barely see it through the crowd. Like people were picking.
They were
yeah.
digging up the
I don't know.
concrete for some reason. I'd like to know that.
I don't know. I don't know what that was about. But I did notice that. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about for this episode, Cassian leaving, Willman staying again for a woman, which did not work out well on Mino Rao. So I was kind of upset that he was like again going back for a different girl. Like, dude, come on, get your life together.
Willman is such an underdeveloped character, and he's just out here banging chicks and huffing drugs, and he has potential to be such a cool character, and we only see the little snippets of his life. I think Willman is probably the biggest victim of the condensation of 4 seasons into one.
That may
Or
be.
maybe
We'll
Brasso.
We'll see in the next arc. I'm hoping his drug addiction with
Brasso.
Saw Gerrera comes back up in a big way. But yeah, I
Talk
thought
about
that was
acting,
funny that he
that
was like,
single
"No, I'm
tear?
going back for this girl," and I'm like, oh, "Okay." But then the whole montage that we see of Cassian leaving on the ship or on the transport or whatever, he plays that radio, and we hear Drina's distress signal going out, saying like, if anyone's listening, if anyone can hear this, tell our story, tell them what happened here today. As we see a montage of the devastation, the aftermath of the massacre. Yeah, it was so sad.
and he's to at some point it's not going to be told, or they're not going to be saved, which is why in episode 9 I'm glad that Willman is still alive. Leg's pretty messed up, but like it is like he's like leaving his friend basically for dead, and that single tear going down Andor's cheek is like so good because it's like it's for his friend, it's for everyone that just lost in the back. Someone just got shot in front of him, which probably doesn't really face him that much. I guess since he kills multiple people in the next episode too, but it's so good. And then my favorite scene, I think, is when Dedra is having a panic attack and freaking out. I think that is some of the best acting in Star Wars as well. Her hand shaking, and I think it's so good because we are so used to seeing her a certain way, and to see her crack twice in one episode in different ways is is fantastic. And we never really see that aspect, and it's not to humanize people, in history that have like done terrible things, obviously. But Dedra is such a relatable character, or such a character we like that character. She is a antagonist, but we follow her, and so she's one of the main characters. But to be able to see her be like so confident from a million miles away, right? And like in the first season, she's just like it's such a small level where she's like, we're gonna hunt these, in this one town. But now the fact that it's basically this entire planet's gonna be destroyed, and she's basically the one that started that, and then this huge war and this genocide. I mean, it's clearly it's weighing on her so much. And then the fact that then we end with Edie's, under seeing the newscast is a great way to end the episode too. I think it's just like a little cherry on top to be like, oh yeah, like this actually does affect a lot of people. And I think it just shows you like the horrors of war and conflict, and I think the decisions of who you are as a person when when push comes to shove. And I think this show, eh, honestly, I think has done it better than most war movies. Has done that. Like I would take, even when though again I just assumed he's French because it feels he looks like a Frenchman, like he should
He's
have
wearing a
baguette.
beret.
The guy who's screaming, like he's like behind the pillar. It's like maybe it's the fountain, and he's like holding the gun. And they're coming
Yeah.
back to him multiple times. He's yelling. That scene is so good because again, a lot of shows, a lot of movies, especially in current day, wouldn't take the time to even like show that. I feel like, but they're like, no, that feels like akin to like Saving Private Ryan or something.
Mhm.
You don't see that very often, and it's I'm still thinking about that scene too, and those scenes make it feel real and they feel grounded. And my God,
And
it's
it makes
so good.
the thing that I think the show does the best is making you, the audience, feel conflicted. Because you mentioned
Yes,
that
yeah.
last shot on Edie, and that's another good example of it, where you see her watching the newscast and she's like just kind of sitting there crying, and you're like, oh man, oh, but I
Yeah.
hate you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fuck that lady. But I understand those
you're like,
emotions.
I have sympathy for you, but I don't like you.
Yeah, that emotion you're feeling sucks. I agree, but also you deserve to feel that emotion.
Yeah, it was oh man, such a good episode. And one thing that I wanted to talk about this episode is whether or not you guys think we'll see Dedra again. Because I
I
don't know if we will, and I'm okay with
Yeah.
not. I think her story is kind of done, actually.
I think we need to
Yeah.
wrap it up, but I mean because I want to see where she ends up after that, right? Like I think seeing the fallout of that. Does she get what she wants? Is she going to continue because she needs to, and she thinks she has to? Is she going to be under Krennic's? I don't know, like in the Krennic camp, I guess. Or is she going to be like exile herself? And I don't see her surviving in exile. I don't think that's
Take your
really a
sick ass
possibility.
promotion, Grand Moff Miro.
Yeah, and
I think that's the likely outcome. I mean, if I were to bet on it right now, I would say that
Mhm.
she's probably going to be in the last 3 episodes. But I don't think she needs to be. I mean, her story was so interconnected with Cyril, and his story ended so, perfectly and poetically that I feel like Dedra, um, we can kind of leave it right there. I mean, she is the antagonist. She's not a good guy. And she was successful. She kind of lost in a big way. Again, she realized what she's done, and she's gonna have to live with the consequences all her life. But that's it. I mean, her whole story was leading up to the Gorman massacre and the Gorman project. That was her project. So if we do
Mhm.
see her again, I don't know. I don't know what story purpose it would have, other than, like you said,
But
Matt.
that
It would just
was
be to be like, oh, here's what she's up to now. This is what happened. So
But the
yeah, I
Gorman
just
stuff was just this season, though, right? So like, I
the
think you
start.
could
Yeah,
so you can continue. What's next? Because in season one, obviously, no mention of Gorman. So I feel like you can continue that. I mean, this is obviously a huge milestone, a huge crux of her character. So I think honestly, I think we should see more because it's like again, when these consequences happen, what happens after that, right? That's like being like, could it end? Sure. Could we stop Star Wars after Luke Skywalker blows up the Death Star? Sure. But what happens after that? 'Cause that's a huge moment, and how does he deal with that? I think I want to see what happens to Dedra.
I think practically we will see her again because I think we'll definitely see Major Partagaz and Lonnie Young again, and
Yeah.
Dedra just fits into that so
Mm,
seamlessly. And
Lonnie.
it would be kind of weird not her with her not being in it. But I think this is also another casualty of the 1 year time jumps and also kind of releasing them in 3 episode batches. Like the finale is next week, and I have no idea even broad strokes what it's about. Like there's nothing set up for the finale, and season 1 was such a clean story where it was like all of it was leading back to Ferrix, and now
Yeah.
this one, it's like Luthen's not even part of the Yavin stuff, and so it all feels very disjointed. And I know 3 episodes is a lot of time, and like it would be like saying this right now in season 1 after episode 9, and we still had 3 more episodes, and just because it was spaced out across 3 weeks, it felt like it was building to one finale a lot better. So like maybe if I watch the finale, after episode 10, it'll start building to something. But right now, it really doesn't feel like it is, and it feels like we've had 3 so far arcs that are relatively unrelated to each other. I mean, the Gorman obviously is extremely related to each other. It's almost like we had 1.5 or 2.5 arcs that is very disjointed, and it's not like a cohesive season like season 1 was. But I'll reserve that final judgment for after I see the finale, because I may be proven wrong. But I am at least I have no idea if Dedra's going to be in it. I have no idea. Like Luthen might not be in it. We know nothing about the finale.
No,
That's
Luthen will definitely be in it.
Yeah.
Luthen
He'll
has a
be in
story
it,
purpose
but-
though. Like we still have loose ends that we need to tie there. I don't think there's any loose ends with Dedra, but bringing up Lonnie, I do think that's a loose end. So I think that's an excellent point for
Well, I was
almost
gonna
that reason
say-
alone. That's a good reason to be confident that we'll
Luthen's-
see her.
Presumably going to be in prison, I assume.
He talks a
That's
lot
a-
about
he's staying
being
behind?
hanged. He talks a lot about
He-
dying. I think
he-
I think they're
he does, and-
foreshadowing.
I thought he was when he came to the Senate in short hair, grumbly voice, Luthen. I was like, oh, he's fucking dead
Yeah.
for sure. And then he did it.
But-
I was surprised. I was like, all
I-
right.
I had never thought about him literally being hanged until this moment. And I've even had a force for thought before about in the Aldani heist when the Commandant says you'll be hanged for this. And I was like, do they actually hang people in Star Wars? Like if his story ends with him being hanged, that's so perfect, right?
Mhm.
Like that would wow. I got goosebumps just thinking about
Well,
that
let's talk
possibility.
about it. It's the last episode. This episode's running long, so we're gonna have to kind of run through Welcome to the Rebellion, and I don't think we're gonna be
Yes,
able to do
which
that
is
because I
nuts.
think it is almost just as good as Who Are You?
Yeah, this is simply a long episode.
Yeah, but
Do
I
we
mean,
want to do we want to go through who Welcome to the Rebellion? Do we want to do that for a part 2? I can literally do whatever because
we'll make it a Patreon exclusive. Make sure you guys go join our Patreon. No.
because we got to talk about so much shit. And also Benjamin Bratt fully on board for Bail Organa. I was on the fence, but I don't think Jimmy Smits could pull this.
You
type
made a
of
good argument for why
mystery off.
Benjamin Bratt is a better Bail Organa, and I'm kind of with it now. Sometimes recastings are for the better. Look at Dumbledore.
I also think in my headcanon, during this time, Bail Organa super stressed, maybe on the verge of divorce, maybe a little sick. Kids are being
Why?
shitheads because he's skinnier.
Leia.
Because he's skinnier. He's losing
He's
weight.
skinnier. So he's really not doing good. So next time we see him, he's like, he's happy and jolly again. So he can
They have to
put the
do- they have to do
pounds
like
back
a-
on.
A Harrison Ford is Thunderbolt Ross, where they joke about shaving the mustache.
Yeah. See,
Like, oh, Bailey lost some weight. Oh yeah, doing Atkins
he's like, yeah,
again.
but he's been ripping it at the gym. He's just like, yeah. He's like, yeah, super not stressed, been running like 10 miles a day.
So, Welcome to the Rebellion. It starts out, obviously, it's very focused on Mon Mothma. She's going to be giving a big speech. She's talking to Bail Organa. Bail warns her that another senator found a listening device in their office, which triggers Mon to look for some in hers. They found one, and I thought it was kind of an interesting boiling point for her where she just instinctively grabbed a coaster or whatever and smashed it. And
Yeah.
even when we saw that in real time, Luke was like, "Oh, that seems a little rash. Like, maybe don't do that." And I
Yes.
think that's true. And I think had she thought about it for a second, she would know, like, yeah, that's not the play. Don't do that. But she did,
Well,
and
I
I
thought
feel
it
like
was
it's
a
a
lot. I thought it was a lot more rash than it was, but apparently the Imperials will just fumble around and dick around for a couple of days, being like, we really don't think it's on our end. What could have happened to the listening device? Like,
you thought
come on, guys!
they would have stormed the
Luke.
room in 20 seconds.
No,
Yeah.
Luke, you've worked in corporate America before. You know that's how things work. Nothing gets done. It takes forever.
Can
Do you know how many?
confirm.
Do you know how many emails I have to send still? I'm like, I can wait. What is it?
just circling
Mother's
back.
Day?
And then we get this great moment with Cassian where he wants out and he's talking to Clea, and she's just like, what does that mean? And Cassian's like, you'll know what it means.
Yes. Also, Clea with
Obviously.
her hair down, jarring. That's
She looks
the one.
great.
That's the one thing I need more info on. Is why did Clea all of a sudden randomly? Is it because it's nighttime? Just hair down?
She had her
crazy
hair
to
down
me.
for one sequence in
Luthen
season
didn't have
one
his
also.
wig on.
Did
I
she?
mean, they were rushed for time. A lot was happening.
All right, sorry, go. Yeah, I love that feeling and that sense of like they're in this, they're there. It's nighttime. It's like I don't know. It just feels like when you're in school after hours, you're like I shouldn't be here. That's what it feels like we're watching. I love that.
Yeah. Like, Luthen was borderline not doing anything. He was just, like, walking around. Like, it does feel like the end of his arc because he's not going to Yavin for whatever reason, which, again, I wish was more well established and developed. But he is like, once Cassian leaves, Vel already left, Cinta's dead, and Mon Mothma is going to be an open rebellion on Yavin. Like, what is his next move? He is nearly done, and it's not like he said several times that he's going to do this until he dies, but it's like he's almost retiring. Like,
I think he
is
knows
he
that.
planning something huge?
I think he knows that it's coming. That the light
Yeah.
at the end of the tunnel is not that far off for him. But oh my gosh, Luthen was not in this episode that much, but I feel like his presence was. And when he
Yeah.
was on screen, again, Stellan Skarsgård needs to win an Emmy for this performance. I mean, he is just so good. The scene where Mon and Luthen are talking to each other, and Luthen discloses that Erskine is one of his guys, and it like freaks out Mon because now she doesn't know who to trust, and then she tells Luthen about Tay Kolma, and she's like, "You remember Tay Kolma and how
Mhm.
quickly we came to that decision, and you decided that he was a threat and needed to be taken out." And she was like, "I always wonder at what point will I become a threat?" And
Yeah.
she's terrified of him, and as she should be. Luthen is a terrifying figure in the rebellion, and I think that scene is just so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Obviously, I loved the kind of implied death of Tay Kolma in the third episode, so I really like that callback and the fact that it's still like really tugging on Mon Mothma moving forward all these years later.
Mhm.
And then Luthen begs Mon Mothma not to go with Bale's guy because his team is compromised. He can't say how he knows, and she can't tell
Yes.
anybody that she knows, but they're compromised. So he's going to be sending somebody, and the passphrase is, "I have friends everywhere." And it's like a simple phrase, but this is the moment where I was able to kind of differentiate the acting from the writing because
Mhm.
I feel like Stellan Skarsgård acted that so well when he says it twice. Because the
Yes.
first time he's like, the phrase is "I have friends everywhere," and then the second time he says it, it's like both a beg and a threat, where he's like, "No, listen,
Yes.
I have friends everywhere." And for
Yeah.
some reason, the second time he says that, I'm like getting goosebumps, and I'm like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, I don't know what to think of Luther. Like he is terrifying, but he is a good guy." And I'm like, I don't
he's-
know.
Because I think when he says that to her too, it's just like he knows. I think that she is more important than him too, and like you need to do this basically. Like I think
he,
it says it all right. Like she's gonna be able to take this thing further than he can, and then that's also a great scene when Mon talks to Bale and he's like, "Do you trust these guys?" And it's like, oh my, like is she not gonna trust Bale now? Because like he's like, "Yeah, I trust them. Like I don't know them personally. You can whatever. But it's like, oh man, it's just that complicates things. We know kind of where that goes in general, but it's like, man, that does complicate like relationships right there. Where it's just like, oh yeah, like I trust them, but also I know that they're bad.
Yeah.
Um,
And I apologize because now I think I might be going out of order because I'm pretty sure Cassian talked to Luthen first. But
he
there
did.
was the
Yeah.
other scene with Luthen when he's talking to Cassian and Luke. This is
Oh wait,
going
no,
back
he
to
did.
your point where they're talking about going to Yavin, and Luthen says, "No Yavin for me." And Cassian says, "There's still some bridges you haven't burned." And Luthen says, "We'll take care of that today."
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, like what does that mean? Like he knows the end is coming. He does not have
Yeah.
much longer in this rebellion. And
No.
Matt, I think you're right. I think he's kind of like hitching his horse to Mon Mothma. Like he knows,
Yeah.
like she's the future of this rebellion. I need to get her to where she needs to be, and then I can kind of
Yeah.
exit stage right or whatever. And it's gonna be sad. I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I don't have a
I
good
don't know
feeling
either.
about it.
You are not going out of order though. That is after.
Is it okay? Good.
Yeah, it is. And then I went out of order, and then when I was talking about Bale, sorry, go on, Luke.
I didn't like this episode as much as episode 8. That's not to say I don't like this episode, but again, I have mostly complaints to say about it. But I'll start with my pro because
That's
you guys,
crazy to me. What?
you
That's
guys talked a lot
insane.
about Stellan Skarsgård's acting and Denise Goh and Kyla Sowlers, and I agree that they were all really good really great performances. But the one that I took away really blown away by was Genevieve O'Reilly's, because this arc, at least this story, it's not even, it is an arc, but it's a weird structuring wise, because like episode 8 had climax the whole time, and now episode 9 also has climax the whole time, so it's not like beginning, middle, and end like
But
most
it's
arcs
such a
have
different
been.
way. Ugh.
Yeah, which is not necessarily a flaw. But this episode could have gone the same way like the last arc on Gorman when they're doing the heist. And it's like, well, I know that it succeeds because Cyril and the Imperials are helping. Like, I know Andor and Mon Mothma escape. And that's basically the middle 35 minutes of this 50-minute episode. And if it wasn't for Genevieve O'Reilly's spectacular performance, I would not have cared nearly as much. Obviously, her speech stands above it in a series so, like, damn near every episode has an unbelievable monologue, and to shoot yours straight to the top is an incredible feat. But then immediately after that, the fear, the horror, the trepidation, like every single detail of her performance was spectacular, and I think she made this episode so much better than it could have been with even an average actress. Like, just the story runs the risk of me not being invested, but she really carried me through.
I mean, yeah,
I
I think
100% agree. Genevieve O'Reilly is another standout
Yeah.
performance, and like this is like a super blink and you miss it moment. But when Cassian kills Cloris, she has like a very, very human reaction to this person being
Mhm.
shot down in cold blood in front of her, even though she knows that he is an ISB plant. Because it's the second person that she's seen killed. The first person was that member of Bale's team who tries taking her in the lobby, but that
Mhm.
person pulled out a gun on her, right? So I'm like, okay,
And she'd
she's
never
like,
met her before.
yeah, she doesn't know this person.
Yeah.
She's shell shocked. This person has a gun in her face. She dies. They keep going on their mission. You know, she's probably like panicking, like, what the heck is going on? And then she sees Cloris, and they have that weird moment where I feel like it humanizes Cloris again, because Cassian says, "What's his name?" And she's like, "What?" And he said, "What's his name?" Cloris. And then Cassian is like, Cloris, we found her. And he's like, "Who
Yep.
are you?" And then he pulls out his gun and shoots him down immediately. And Mon Mothma kind of freaks out in that. Not long. It's not like a long, drawn out freak out or anything, but it was, for some reason, really stuck out to me as like a very human reaction.
Yep.
I
mean-
like the story element of how Mon doesn't know who she can trust after this speech. You know, she doesn't really trust Luthen. He says she can't trust Bale. And so she's in the elevator with Cassian, and they throw around the word Yavin a ton in this episode from all sorts of parties. And after nearly a full 2 seasons of everyone having such a stick up their ass about never mentioning Luthen's name, that seems like a bit of a mistake
And
every
knowing
time.
that there's listening
But-
devices.
Yeah, but Cassian is like trying to win her trust, and he's like, I know your cousin Vel. We're the only survivors from Aldani. I live with her on Yavin. Luthen sent me. Even after all that, that is such damning evidence, and she still can barely trust him. That is a crazy amount of evidence to not be enough, yet it still makes sense that it's not really enough because the situation is so intense.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, also, her speech is some, I know, capital MON on monologue. But I feel
Nice.
like, thank you. But I feel like new segment. But it's impossible not to. I feel like be like, and this is so relevant today, just because the internet exists as well. Again, you can look at this like culturally, politically, whatever. But I mean, the distance between what is said and what is known to be true has become an abyss. I mean, that is the most real thing I've ever heard in my entire life, and it came from this. And then the death of truth is the ultimate victory of evil.
I love that
I mean-
line. I love that line. I had that one quoted too. I thought that was so
Yeah.
good.
I mean, I want to get this tattooed on my body. Like that's like I don't have any tattoos. I mean, like this is like those are some of the best lines, and I think they're so good. I don't know. It's fantastic writing. It's fantastic acting that brings this all together, and it's so timely and relevant. I think that this show could come out, and this was written forever ago, right? Like, I mean, sure, tweaks could have been happened or whatever, but like, I cannot imagine much of the speech had been changed, because that is the basis of Palpatine. But it is highlight, and it's so funny. Like you said, episode 8 and 9 both are basically all like, kind of like revving up and all action and climax, and it is so fun to see 8 and 9 do the same thing on such different levels and in such different ways. One has literal just all out action for 40 something minutes, and this one is all building into speeches and getaways, and it is the tension is so different, and they are able to pull it off in 2 episodes in a row, which is a massive feat, because I think if you just do 2 action episodes back to back, that's a hard thing to do and keep going. But this is all played off and all paid out from things that we've been seeing for the past 20 something episodes, 18 episodes or so. But anyway,
Yeah, I 100% agree. I loved the speech that she gave. About halfway through this episode, Luke and I looked at each other and we were like, should we watch that episode of Rebels real quick where Mon is taken by the Ghost Crew like right after this? Because we know that this led right into that. And so we did. And you do see part of the speech in that episode, and it is different. So they did change the speech a little bit. Small retcon there, but that's okay. I'll allow it because I really like the speech in Andor and that kind of big picture stepping back from Gorman and just kind of like talking about the importance of truth from a more philosophical standpoint. Yeah, I really like that a lot. And then Cassian smuggles Mon out of the Senate. The entire
so good.
The entire action sequence. I don't know. That's not even action. That's just like tense political thriller. I don't know what you would call that.
Yeah, there's
but
guns.
it was good.
I qualify that as action. Except I do have another question that I don't like having questions when I'm considering something perfect. They made a point that Cassian wouldn't be able to bring his gun in, and then he had his gun when he needed it. How do you get his gun in? I feel like that was resolved or addressed, but I did watch it twice and I didn't catch it either time.
I'm gonna say a certain orifice.
He goes through a metal detector.
It's
I'll have
3D
to-
printed. Luke, you have a 3D printer. I got to rewatch, to be honest.
They had a
Yeah,
3D
sure.
printer. It was a little different, but
Also,
I
I
don't-
love when Mon's in the back of the cruiser and she's really tense and like she's like never driven that fast or that escape or whatever, and then she like finally calms down. Talk about acting that was so good. I just love the idea that she has so much to learn still.
It's a lot of those little quiet moments where Genevieve O'Reilly really puts
yeah.
on a good performance, where she most of the
the
time she's just saying
episode-
nothing. You're right, just sitting in the
Yes.
back of that car or whatever, and she's just so
And
good.
that the episode could have ended there, and yet we still have 20 more minutes.
Like 4 more scenes, including the one and only, I don't want to call it a complaint, but question that I have, which is that random Melshi scene when they cut back to Yavin and they were inspecting all of their blasters and they were like, hey, whose does this belong to? And Melshi's like, oh, I think that might be mine. I'm like,
Yeah,
What's the
is
point of that?
I
Like we knew Melshi gets
Yeah.
in at some point. Like he was in Rogue One. Like was
well,
that
I don't
supposed to be
understand.
like a Marvel like cameo moment where everyone's like, oh, it's Melshi? And I'm like,
It definitely felt like that. I mean, it could have been an after credit scene for God's sakes, and
yeah,
I
that's like what it
can't
felt
believe
like.
can't believe it's how I felt also with K2SO. Like they're just jamming everyone into their
No,
finale
I'll
arc
defend
starting
K2SO. That one
places.
was better.
I agree
We'll
with
we'll
I agree
we'll
with
talk
that.
about that in a second.
The
Going in
Melshi
order.
scene, is there a relevance that we're supposed to understand the blaster? That's something that I did not understand. It looked like
I didn't.
when she looks
I
at
didn't
the
catch it in real time, but I read
like
about it from other people that did. It
okay.
was the gun that Cassian took from Ferrex, or did he take it from the security? I think he took it from the Morlana security corpos, and then took it to Aldani, and then left it on Niamos when he got arrested, and then gave it to Melshi after Niamos when they got out of Narkina 5, and she recognized it from Aldani.
Okay, so then that honestly, then I'm okay with that too, because I was like, I just didn't understand the context. I think it was just because we're watching these, and I really am excited to rewatch Andor and enjoy it more,
Yeah.
and not just rush to record. But also, I want to know what happens. But that I feel better about that scene than it was thrown in there a bit,
Yes,
but also
I mean
it then
the
gives
show.
you time to be able to show it. Then Andor and Mon are in the safe house, so it does pass time in a good way where then we're not randomly just on Yavin and we're like, let's see this scene. Plus, then we have to have Bix and Andor, reunite and stuff too. So I'm okay with it. I have no complaints. Who am I to say when this show's 10 out of
It does
10?
it
I
does
got
make it better. I will say that. That seemed like a very deep pull. However, it does also feel like they had like a big plan set from the beginning about the origin of that blaster or something. And then when they
yeah.
decided to cut it down to 2 seasons, Tony Gilroy's like, "Oh yeah, we should do something about that." I just throw it in this scene here. Because it's like, yeah, that's kind of a cool like connection, but still didn't really serve much of a
Mhm.
purpose. Like we didn't see Vel follow up with
Yeah.
anything or like why I don't know, whatever.
It's like so many other things, like the news, the exposition via breaking news. It's like these are very stereotypical bad writing things that Andor just slaps fantastic writing around to make it make more sense, but it's still structurally not that not what I want.
How do
I
you
don't.
feel about the theory? And by the way, how do you feel about it? As in, this is the dumbest theory of all time. Have you seen that people think that Clea is Leia because they're like, oh, it's clearly her.
You mean
and I was like,
Leda?
what do you?
Leda?
Lita? No, Leia, right?
Yeah, Princess Leia. Like people think that Clea is Leia.
Clea? No, I saw that people thought that Leda was Leia.
Oh,
Lita.
really? That's so dumb. Either way,
Her daughter,
dumb
Mon
dumb
Mothma's
as-
daughter.
Yeah.
Dumb as shit.
Yeah,
Um
I did not.
I don't
I
believe
did
either
not
of those
see that.
groups of people
no,
exist.
no, it's 100% just clickbait things that don't make sense.
Yes.
But I always take 10 seconds to think about it. Like, well, maybe no, that doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense.
And also
Um,
the fact that like Andor is not that type of show.
and well,
But they do have to wrap up Cassian's sister pretty quick
and Uncle
in
Harlow.
the finale.
We'll see who those people
don't-
are.
I don't think we'll see Uncle
I
Harlow.
don't think so
And
either.
Ben
Now that Cyril's
Kenobi.
dead, but it's a little disappointing. Um,
I'm waiting for a spin-off
and then we get back to
called
the
Uncle Harlow. It's like an
uh,
Uncle Leo from Seinfeld. spin-off. Sorry, go on. This episode's going so
Uncle
long. I don't have
Harlow,
time for jokes.
hello. So we get back to the safe house. We find out that Willman is alive, which is good. It puts a little bow on the Gorman arc where he gets back. He has a pretty nasty broken leg though. But then they kind of go their separate ways. They have a good tie-in to the Rebels story, like I said, where they said like, oh, Gold Squadron's gonna take the Senator, and you guys go back to Yavin. So I like that a
Ugh,
lot.
we're so close.
And then we get back to Yavin, and Cassian and Bix reunite, and Cassian says that he's done, that he's planning on leaving and running away. And then he wakes up in the morning to a note from Bix, or a video message from Bix, saying that
Heartbreaking.
she couldn't let that happen to the rebellion, and she knew that as long as they were together, she would have always regretted being the reason that she deprived the rebellion of Cassian Andor. And so she said, for the both of us, I am making the decision for the rebellion.
It's so good. It's
So
I
sad.
also this is where the Force healer is important, I think, Luke, when we're going back to episode 7. Because she she said it a couple times before. She feels it, right? I'm not saying everyone's force sensitive. I said this last week as well. But I think the fact that she believes this stuff and the fact that that it shakes Andor is the reason she leaves. That is the Chekhov's gun. Is in episode 7 when the Force healer senses this. That shakes Andor, which I think shakes Bix to her core, which is why she leaves when Andor comes back with that news. Because I don't think she was planning on leaving until Andor shows up that night. Because I feel like it is so heartbreaking, but it is so
The Force healer
it's such a great
and
sacrifice.
Vel's conversation, both.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think Vel's conversation did more to set this up for Bix internally than the Force healer. But I may be wrong. I haven't fully come to my own thoughts even on the Force healer yet.
And then, so Bix leaves, and I want to give some
I don't
credit.
like it very much.
We got to give some credit to Matthew, though, because I'm pretty sure the last couple
Yeah.
episodes, Luke and I were like, no, Bix is definitely going to die. And Matt was like,
Yep.
well, maybe there's a way that she gets away. Well,
Maybe
here
she
it
just
is.
leaves.
She abandons
knew?
him for
There
the
we go.
rebellion. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that really, it hurts. I don't think we're going to see her again. But
I don't think so
really
either.
liked how they handled it.
Me too. The only thing I can
I didn't love it.
see is I don't know. Like I text you guys this too. I wonder if we're gonna get a Jyn Erso Hollow Puck type situation as a little cameo, and that's what's gonna lead them to go rescue Jyn. But I am also thinking, I was like, it'd be really kind of a sweet thing, and it does make sense to jump ahead in time by not that much. But I'm like, well, it would be nice to be able to see like Bix and all these other people living after the Death Star blows up and seeing how Cassian
A
affected
Rebels
all of these
style
people.
post Jedi montage of where
Honestly-
they are, a little
Honestly,
voiceover.
well, let's not go that far, but I would love to see a very emotional moment of like, oh yeah, like Bix did the right thing even though it's heartbreaking, you know, or like just all these people that like Andor affected by doing this heroic thing, and almost not even heroic. I mean, he doesn't really even have a choice. He's who's kind of born into this unknowingly. But like I don't know, part of me does want to kind of see something like that, in a weird way, just to be like, I don't want it to be the end of Bix necessarily, because I feel like her story is so interesting. But anyway,
Yeah,
And
I
then
absolutely
know
loved
my-
it. Luke, do you have a specific reason as to why you didn't love that?
Yes, it's the same reason I don't love season 2 as much as season 1. It is underdeveloped, Cassian's relationship with the rebellion, such that they need him so badly. Like, it goes back to Vel's conversation with Bix, and it goes back to all of a sudden now, as of this arc, you need prior, outside of Andor itself, Star Wars knowledge. Where if you've never seen Star Wars before, which season 1 and up to this arc, you could have watched Andor and enjoyed it just as much as I do. But now you see Vel come in and she says, oh, the rebels here really need Cassian, and he's a great leader, and they need him to step up. Me as the audience, having just seen Andor, I don't know who the fuck these people are. She even says, I was sent by Draven and Dodonna. I don't know who they are. And then Bix says that I'm going to leave so that you can really take your place here. Like, these are strangers for this story that they've told so far.
I think that's the thing, is we're used to a different format in Star Wars storytelling, but I think we're following Andor. We know that character, and we understand that person through actions. We've seen him as a good leader, right? It doesn't really matter where he's at. We just know Andor as a person, as a good leader. And I feel like the same thing where it's like we're meant to understand these stories through the characters versus we're not supposed to understand the characters through the story. Does that make sense? Did I say the same
Yes,
thing? Yes,
that is a great, and that's what my problem is, that we are experiencing we're not experiencing the story through the characters, because the characters go through drastic events in these year gaps, and then we just catch up with them and experience the character through the story that they then exposit, kind of McClunky at times.
They're not going through drastic events, though. They're just going through growth.
Cassian went to Yavin. He met General Draven. He joined this entire rebellion and moved there and disconnected from Luthen. That is drastic.
You don't need to
But
see that.
Yeah, we've seen the cracks breaking since season 1 even.
I mean,
You
there's a line between, like, how did he get from this room to that room? We need to see him walk there. And it's like, no, you don't, actually. You don't need to see every single thing. Like, some of what you're pointing out for like the stuff that we need to see, I do agree with. Some of this I don't though. It's like moving to Yavin. Like what do you want to see? You want to see him pack up his boxes and put them in a ship and then come here and Draven shake his hand and say, "I'm Draven. I'm the head of the Yavin operation. This is your bungalow
Yes.
over here to the left." And it's like, no.
I want to see him meet a single character from Yavin, have any sort of tie to this new group. I want to see him. I mean, we just don't have any relationship between Cassian and these rebels.
But that's not the point of the story, though. The point of the story is to
Except for
get
Yes,
Melshi.
it is, because
That's why we got the
these
Melshi scene to know
rebel-
that Melshi's there.
These
Guys.
rebels are the ones that so desperately need Cassian, such that Bix leaves, but we don't have any understanding of the relationship between Cassian and these rebels.
We don't, but we have we understand the relationship between Cassian and the rebellion. That's the more important part, and that's why Bix leaves.
No, we don't.
Yes,
we
do.
know this.
The
We do
Force Healer
outside of
says it.
Andor.
No, we know because the Force Healer says it in the beginning, and we have the same conversation as well. Those conversations are meant to fill those gaps and introduce you to what's going on.
Yes,
And then Andor being
it's these-
off planet is his presence is also obviously missed, and we're just going around. The best part, which we need to get to, is more goggles, guys. I don't know what we're talking about over here.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about next was the introduction of K2SO, which I actually really liked because
Yeah.
it was like the perfect segue in Cassian's life, where it's like he just had his heart broken, his love of his life just walked out on him, and he has this hole in his heart that is now going to be filled with K2. And it's like, it makes perfect sense that he's going to bond to this droid and that they're going to become best friends. And we don't need to see every single conversation that they had to form that friendship, because we're going to jump to it in a year and they're going to be friends, and that's going to make sense.
And also, it's going to make his death even sadder. More sad.
Yes.
Can't wait to watch it.
I didn't like the K2SO bits because they first off they retconned a comic book to explain K2SO in a different way, which is fine. That comic book wasn't very well received, but then this story of introducing K2SO was not particularly captivating. It was not character driven at all. Cassian just saw two halves of a KX droid and was like, "Hey, I'm going to take that with me," and then gave it to a stranger who then fixed it up, and now they presumably said he's yours. It's like that story's not better. It just sort of happened. Not to mention, the reason I really dislike it is because it undercuts the emotional state, the emotional moment that Cassian was feeling after Bix left. They cut that short and just went right into this, what felt like an epilogue to put everyone into their starting places for the final arc.
But I also loved it.
I disagree with the second half of what you said, but I do agree with the first half about how he just randomly collects the KX unit, because I thought about that too, and even in my notes I forgot to mention it when he did it, but yeah, I wrote down that he takes the KX unit with him for reasons. Like, yeah, that was kind of random. It's like, that's a D&D move, you know, where you're like, okay, well, I'm going to grab this droid that I just killed to bring it with me just in case. Because it's like,
No,
I mean,
not
imagine
just
in like
case.
the Phantom Menace, if like Qui-Gon Jinn just like strikes down a B1 battle droid, he starts collecting it, and he's like, "Yeah, it might come in handy." It's like, you're not wrong. Like, that's it's definitely not a bad idea, but there was no reason to do it.
Well, I think that he saw what they could do, right? And he's like, "Well, if we could reprogram this, I thought it made perfect sense in the fact that he
You could
literally
say that about
saw.
literally every droid, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
it makes
But
sense. You
but-
could say that about every gun that he passes on the
yeah,
floor.
that's why I'm saying, like,
Exactly.
it's not like a bad idea, but there was no reason for him to do it. Like, there was no like conversation earlier back at Yavin, like, oh, we need droids that can help us hack into systems or something like that.
Guys,
and he's like, hey, here's
this
a
is what-
droid. And like, no,
This is what makes him a good leader. You don't need that. He's thinking on his toes left and right.
that's
He's
true.
coming up with new souls. You guys,
I think that beat
Qui-Gon
ventures
Jinn?
into fan service, because like if you have not seen Rogue One or any Star Wars and you're just watching Andor and you're really emotional from this scene where Bix leaves and Cassian's dealing with it, and then they go and make this droid, it's like, the fuck is this? Like, this is out of left field. This is not well set up. There's no emotional relevance to this droid.
No, there's emotional relevance. He's gonna fill the hole that Bix left.
Not because he's that droid though. That's just because he's meeting someone.
I don't think
He could have bumped into anyone.
Yeah,
this
it's
is
his new
yours.
friend.
I think Cassian was like, "Here's this droid. It fucked shit up on Gorman. Let's fix it up for the rebellion." And it just so happens to be his best friend because he's witty and hilarious. Even from the moment when he's powered back on.
Cute and
You
fun.
know,
It is like that.
it is like that. Yeah. It was again. We're just gotta go along for the ride. I mean, again, like we can look at so many other things and be like, "Oh, this is fan servicey," blah blah blah. But it's like within the world of Andor, I feel like you can get a little bit of fan servicey, and the fact, would I love again? Would I love to see more Andor? Yes, I would. But being like this is 24 episodes condensed. Again, I'm not even gonna say condensed because it was just like, hey, here's an idea for Andor. I've had multiple ideas that were like, let's shorten this actually because it makes more sense. I'm okay with that. And honestly,
They did not shorten it because it makes more sense. They shortened it because they didn't want to spend 15 years making this show.
Yeah, which I think
I'm okay with
honestly
that.
makes which I think makes
That's
sense to
fine.
be
I
like,
just want to be clear that
if
it was
you're-
not a story decision that the story would make more sense if we condense these 4 seasons into one.
I didn't say
agree
story
with your
makes more sense.
broader point
think-
that every single arc was meant to be a season, and it clearly shows, and you can see like, oh, we probably would have spent more time with these characters had it been a full season. Yeah, I get that, but that doesn't take away from the fact that what we got was still freaking amazing.
I also think again, it doesn't make more sense necessarily for the show, but you also don't want in real life, you don't want somebody to overextend what they're going to do. We're going to have 24 perfect episodes. Or you can go through what D&D did, right? In Game of Thrones, where they just said, fuck it for episodes for season 7 and 8. Be like, we're going to work on a Star Wars show. We don't care about this anymore. So they're going to condense it into 6 episodes and 7 episodes and then just completely botch the ending, right? Like, that's something you don't want to happen. I mean, that's like a very well-known thing to you. And then, so, I mean, like outside external things. And if we hate recasting, you're really setting things on a track of potential people dying, people not wanting to do the show. I mean, what's it? Oh my God, Andor himself was like, yeah, I'm really tired of doing this now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to overexhaust all these people and have something really special start to crumble. Look at all these shows, How I Met Your Mother, The Office, they went past their prime. I think we have 24 perfect episodes where we're always going to want more. I think that's exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, we talked about this last week. I disagree, but
I mean, I'm coming in so passionate, and you're like, it's not changing my mind.
I mean, it's the same conversation we had last week. I'm just not going to say the same response to your same point.
And we're going to have the exact same conversation for 50 years.
The only that brings us to the end of Welcome to the Rebellion. The only lingering question I have is, what about Perrin? And Leda, I guess she's not really an adult, but she is married off, so it's like, okay, maybe she's kind of off doing her own thing. The Empire's going to come after Perrin pretty soon, though, right?
Mm-hmm. I think a longer version of this story would have gone into her decision around how it'll affect her family, and that would have been nice to see as well.
And that decision would have been, well, they're a bunch of assholes anyway. But yeah, I was
she could have gotten him to safety or something. I mean, they could tell a very interesting story there because we really liked Perrin this season too.
I think Perrin would leave her. I think he would be like, "No, you do that. I don't agree with what you're doing."
And I think she would have helped get him to a place where the Empire wouldn't hang him for being married to her. I don't think he would go with her to the rebellion, but I think they could have assisted. Like, she could have given him a warning for one. Like, I think he was going to be blindsided by this, and he's going to probably find out when the Empire shows up on his doorstep and shoots him.
He just finds out on the news. He's like, what? Yeah. But anyway, overall, absolutely fantastic. I loved these 3 episodes so much. And I cannot wait for these last 3 episodes. I don't have any idea what these next 3 episodes are about, and I'm trying hard not to go back and rewatching the trailer for Andor season 2 because I don't even remember like what a potential arc was from the trailer. I feel like I've seen everything that was in it, but I don't want to go back and correct myself if there is anything that I'm missing.
I will say I am not looking forward to the Mon Mothma downgrade in wardrobe to her A New Hope Rogue One outfit.
No,
that shit looks like that looks like ass, and she looks so good this whole series.
This Rebellion's got a shoestring budget, man. You got to make the cut somewhere.
Yeah, we talked about it.
I was looking at. I don't know if it's just like a makeup thing or what, but like Genevieve O'Reilly aesthetically just looks so much prettier in Andor than she did in Rogue One. Like, did they try to make her look not ugly, not to insult the other Mon Mothma actress, but like, you know what I mean? Like, when you watch Rogue One, it's like she looks dried out, like not dried, washed out, and
she's in the
think it's the thing,
rebellion.
right?
She's living in the woods
Yeah.
of Yavin. I mean, she's here. She's a little bit younger, and she's living the high life. She's a galactic senator from a wealthy planet. Makes sense.
I don't want to see that. Bail Organa still looked fresh as hell in Rogue One.
Yeah, that's true. When he steps out of the shadow, what a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we're
Oh,
gonna
man, I was-
see Benjamin Bratt gain a bunch of weight for the next arc, and that'll be the
Fingers
connector.
crossed. He's stressed.
Maybe we'll see him talk to Mon Mothma about his friend Obi-Wan, because apparently they have a conversation like that at some point before Rogue One.
Well,
Also, did you not see Benjamin Bratt or Bail Organa in the Senate by himself, stuffing his face with donuts, being so stressed that they're going to come after him? That
he's
was
stressing him.
clearly setting
Jimmy
up.
Smits is obviously larger than Benjamin Bratt, but we're acting like Jimmy Smits is an obese man. Like he's
right.
in shape.
Yeah,
He's in better shape
He's
than
not
the three of us, I
morbidly obese,
think.
He's just a big gentleman. Benjamin Bratt is just a
Yeah,
very
he's just-
skinny guy.
Yeah.
That's true. We should stop body shaming.
Yeah.
Well, this episode went incredibly long, so I'm not gonna ask anyone if they have a force for thought. However, I will leave us on this question. Matthew, is that a Pittsburgh hat that you've been wearing this whole time?
Yes, it is. And I was waiting for this to be brought up earlier in the episode, so I'll make it really quick. It is my brother Mike's. I don't give a shit about the Pittsburgh Pirates, but it fits real nice.
Okay. I was really hoping you were gonna say it was something with Parma, and it was just like a similar P, but I'm looking at it this
Oh,
entire
no,
time, and I'm
sorry.
like, that is a
I-
Pittsburgh Pirates hat.
I lied. This is just a piss hat. Pro piss.
Okay.
I recently gained a new appreciation for Pittsburgh sports because someone pointed out to me the continuity of black and gold being all of their major league sports team
Nope.
colors.
Wrap it up. Wrap it up. Wrap it
That's
up.
cool.
Nope.
Let us know what you
Steelers suck.
think about Andor. Season 2, episodes 7 through 9. You can reach out to us on social media at Force for Thought, and you can email us at forceforthought@gmail.com. Oh, we're wearing our matching sweatshirts today. Oh, that was fortuitous.